Hey everyone, this is Britton here. Tonight I wanted to talk about the issue of the Stacy raised, and it's about how do you pick a career path for your child and then aid them in it when you're not familiar with the career yourself. And it's a tough career path, like let's say a doctor or something like that. And if you're new to the group, we talk about in this book the importance of picking a career path as early as you can, and starting early education. A lot of times you're gonna get a lot of conflicting advice from the homeschool world. This is following the Raising Children for Greatness philosophy. A lot of parents in the homeschool world, you go to a conference, something like that, and they'll say, oh, don't worry about it. If anything, it's worse to start early than to start too late. And I appreciate what they're doing. They're looking at the public school system. They know how painful education can be to kids. And they're saying, hey, there's no need to start tormenting your children until they're ready. Just kind of ease them into it. And they see kind of this education as this huge burden because the way the public school does it, it is extremely painful. And you don't want to start too early because you're going to burn your kids out. So I understand that. That is not our philosophy. We think you should start immediately, as soon as possible. We believe that kids like to learn. It's natural for them, and you see little kids walking around, they're investigating things, they're putting things in the mouth. They want to explore their world. They want to learn. Learning is actually fun when you do it properly, when you don't follow the public school's method of rote memory and it's all compulsory and it's sitting at a desk all day and stuff. It actually becomes miserable. And I talk about in Revealing School how one of the first things kids learn is to hate learning. And by the time they've graduated, they never want to touch learning again. It was so painful, so dull, so horrible. Most people don't even read after they graduate high school. They're just totally done. They never want to touch it again. But if you do it properly, it's something your kids will want to do forever. So we say you want to start early because one, kids will enjoy it. It's good for kids to learn. The other thing is we talked about in this book, we talked about how you're giving your kids a tremendous head start. And we say it takes 10 to 20 years to master any sort of career or any sort of skill. We do jujitsu, it takes at least 10 years to get a black belt. It used to be 20 years, and the gym I go to, it's more of a 20-year path to the black belt. But we say to master anything, to really become a master, it takes 10 to 20 years. So if you start training your kid when they're 5 years old, at 25, let's say, they'd be a master. Or at least 10 years. They might be a master at 15. But if you wait and you just kind of give them kind of a generic public school education, they dabble in a little of this and a little of that, then they get ready to go to college. They don't really know what they want to do, so they dabble around a little bit. They finally figure it out. By the time they graduate, let's say they picked a career path, they're 22, 23 years old, let's say. Maybe they go to grad school, so now they're 25 years old. They pick a career path, and now to become a master, to really start making money and be skilled in that profession, you're looking at 35. So we can give our kids a tremendous head start by starting early. The other thing, which I'm going to talk about in this next book, the next book is going to be Power. We're going to talk about the genius, tapping into genius, and how, I think I've talked about it before, but how when you start educating a child at a very early age, when they're born, their brain is underdeveloped. It doesn't mean it's not capable of functioning or anything like that. That's not it. It hasn't formed shortcuts, or it's not hardwired yet. That's a good thing. And you can point that child in a certain way. For example, I talk about Beethoven in this next book, how Beethoven's father, he looked at Mozart. Mozart was younger than his son, but it was around the same time, and Mozart was a genius, and he started at a very early age. So Beethoven's father was a famous composer, and he wanted to raise a prodigy, and he picked Beethoven. So we tend to think, these geniuses they're just born that way, or they're just gifted or something. Well, he picked his son. He said, I'm going to make this kid a genius, a prodigy. So he couldn't have picked it if it was merely genetic. And if it was merely training, why didn't he just pick himself? He could have said, well, hey, I've been training for 20 years. I'm going to work super hard and become a genius in music. Because I believe he was a court musician. He was a professional musician. But he decided to start with a child, his little baby son, and make him a prodigy instead of starting with himself. So he realizes there's something different. It's not all about training. It's not all about memorizing. I don't know much about music, but it's not all about memorizing, the musical scales and the notes and all that stuff, right? Music theory. He realized that he himself, as an adult musician, probably couldn't reach the level of genius, but he wanted to start with his son, who's 3 years old. And you think, okay, well, it's about the head start, and he'll get more time in with that kid, and when that kid gets a little bit older, maybe that head start will give him an advantage, and by the time he reaches 50 or 60, he'll have more time in grade and more training, so he'll just be a better musician. But that's not the case. Most of these kids, when they start training them at 3 years old, let's say, or 2 or 3 years old in music, they, like Mozart or Beethoven, they become geniuses by the time they're in their teens. And you think, well, how's that possible if it's not genetics? If Beethoven's father can pick him, so it's not just genetics. He picked his son and said, I'm going to make him a genius, right? In music. And then it's not just training, because at that point the kid had maybe 10 years, but the father had maybe 20, 30 years of music training, right? So the father should be the one that has the advantage. But Mozart and Beethoven, they're the genius, right? In their teens. Why? Because before their brain was hardwired, when it's still trying to figure out using its sensory processing to kind of understand the world around it, right? It's processing the world. And then it's creating shortcuts in the brain, shortcuts to thinking. And so that brain is being wired for music. And now you're dealing with two things. A kid who starts studying music, let's say when he's 20, he just gets really passionate about it. He's like, I'm going to go to college, study music, become a musician. Well, his brain has been wired in 100 different directions. And now he's competing with a child whose brain is specifically wired for music. He can never compete with that child. That child is simply operating on a higher level of genius. Now, the longer the 20-year-old studies music, his brain will start rewiring itself for music, but it is rewiring itself. And so you're not starting with a fresh slate, you're rewiring, trying to unlearn, trying to unthink. And your brain can actually reconnect itself and rewire itself, but it's a process. But if you take that little kid and you start early, you start wiring it, that's where you get to the level of genius. And that's what we want in Raising Children for Greatness. That's the next book, Power. So that's why we want to start early. I know that's controversial. We think, oh, just let the kids be kids, let them go play and do all that stuff. There's time for play. But I have all of my children, and they study and they focus, and they're really excited and passionate at 3 or 4 years old, even about their career path. It's crazy. They're super passionate. So I don't think it's harmful to start early. You don't want to overdo it. And you have to do it properly according to the book and the method, so it's fun, it's motivating, it's exciting for the kids. It's not school. And so many parents, they are homeschooling parents, they redo school at home, and their kids hate it, and there's a lot of crying, there's a lot of tears, and it is painful. And then you think, what's the point? Let's just start later or something. If you're already at that point, then something's gone wrong, and you're totally right. You can't do this. You can't start this early, and I wouldn't recommend you starting it late. You're going to teach your kid to hate learning. So how do you find the career path at that age? Okay, this is great. Great question, Sarah. And that's my next point. So now, and I know I haven't done a good job selling it to you. That's why you have to read the book. You have to read all of the books and develop this whole theory, because I'm introducing things to you that are so foreign. I'm in this group. It's mostly very liberal. It's actually an old instructor from prep school who started it. I didn't realize he was so liberal, but he invited me to the group just to kind of interact. And some of the things I'm talking about are so far out there. Like, there's so much stuff that we bought into, so many assumptions about wisdom and life. My views, it's like, man, you really just need to read my book. I can't write this in the comments and explain it. So I highly recommend you read the books. First of all, Sarah, I'll make a better case for it. But if you accept that, okay, I need to start early. Okay, if we got to that point, how do you pick a career path? Okay, there's two theories. One is you follow the kid's passion. Okay, and this is the belief that it's all genetic. Okay, and if your kid's gifted, it's because he's genetic. He's a freak of nature. He's just got the right connections, and he's wired. He's genius. I don't believe in that. So one is that you follow the passion, that somehow God has just given that kid a passion, and that kid will, as time goes on, that passion will just come out, and he'll discover it for himself, and then he'll know his life's purpose. That's one. Or you go back to the old school and you look at where basically the kid did whatever the father did. And we think, man, that's so miserable. Like we've been programmed by Hollywood. I'll talk about that in the last book, when we talk about the enemy and why we think the way we do. We have been programmed by these people. And you watch so many movies where the kid has this passion. He wants to do ballet, but his father, works in the iron mill and wants to raise his son that way. And this poor kid, his passions are crushed. And so finally he breaks away and he chases his passions. He fulfills his dream. And then usually at the end, the father, he realizes he was wrong or something like that. And we've been wired to think that we have to sit back and wait for the kid and follow the kid and to pick a passion. Certainly, if your kid is super enthusiastic about something and has a natural passion, then you would naturally follow that. That's great. Other one is that you can pick the career path and you can actually make your kid passionate. This is really interesting. Are we programmed to have tastes and preferences, maybe somewhat with our personality, or do we develop them? I would say that we develop them. For example, if a kid goes to school and you look at the kids today, I was on a youth group trip the other day, and these girls they're dressing like homeless girls. They're homeless. They have rips all down their jeans, and they're super tight jeans now. That was in, and there's a certain fashion sense. Now, did all the girls in America just become passionate about holes in their jeans at the same time? Or has that passion been programmed into them by somebody else? And I would say it's by the people who control the fashion industry. I look at the boys today, they're wearing these skinny jeans, and I'm like, you little sissies. But then I look back the way I was dressed. I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, wearing extra, extra, extra large shirts because it was the gangsta, and we were gangstas, and we wore super baggy pants, and we sagged them to our knees. Now, was that my passion? I was passionate about that fashion. I thought it was super cool. But was that something that I had come up with on my own internally? Or was that given to me by somebody else? The people who run the country, the fashion, right? So again, you have to think like, and you'll see a kid, they dress like this gothic fish with nets and all this stuff. And they're like, I'm expressing myself. No, you're expressing somebody else's fashion. You didn't come up with that on your own, okay? So you think about, I saw these kids, these 2 girls, they were eating spiders, huge spiders. They were cooking them. Right there, they were crawling out of the plate. They're just cooking them while they're alive. It's horrible. And then they break them open. It's disgusting. And they're eating them like a delicacy, and they seem to be enjoying it. And I'm like, that is so disgusting. But we eat lobster and crab, and it's the same thing. It's just like the spider of the sea. And it's a delicacy, and we love it, okay? So again, those kids over there were raised that these spiders are delicacy. They taste great. And subconsciously, they have a passion for that flavor. We don't, because we've been raised differently. So while I do think we have some sort of personality and stuff like that, I think it's a lot deeper than that. I think we can actually, this is going to sound horrible, but we can program passions. And it used to be 100 years ago that the passion of the son matched the father, and the passion of the mother or the daughter generally matched the mother. You were raising up a kid in your image, and that's how they naturally want to be raised. When you hand them over to the public school, they're going to follow the passions of their peers. And I talk about this in the book too, how like I was, gosh, what did I want to do with my life? I think like I remember very distinctly, I went to a concert, and my cousin was playing the fiddle, and it was just so fun, and it looked like there was so fun, and there was some other cute girls in the band and stuff, and I'm like, dude, I want to play the fiddle. My mom was like, okay, I'm like, I want to play the fiddle. And then we watched the Olympics, and I was watching the ice skating, and everybody thought it was so cool, and they were jumping, and again, pretty girls, right? So I'm like, dude, I want to be an ice skater, and I got rollerblades and started practicing for the Olympics. I'm like 4th grade. I wanted to be an artist at an pretty early age, and I don't know if I picked that. I think that I drew something, and somebody was like, that is really good. You were going to be a great artist. And maybe they were lying, but I was like, oh, really? Great. And I started to develop my art skills and became good, and it became my passion. I don't know that it was inherent, if that's what I'm saying. And I talk about in the book, like all the different things I was going to do with my life. I was super passionate. It became really cool to be in a punk rock band when I was in middle school. And guess what? I was like, Mom, I need to do drums. I'm like passionate about music. Mom's like, thank God my mom didn't buy into all my passions. We would have been all over the place. Okay. So do you follow the passion? I mean, I guess if there is a passion to follow, fine, tap into it. But the other thing is my theory, you can assign a passion, not perfectly, okay? We'll get into like considerations, things to consider. One of them is gender. And I tried to bucket, I didn't believe in it, and now I've shot myself in the foot, and I'm rethinking it, okay? One's gender, because puberty is going to do different things to your boys and your girls, and it's going to change their passions, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I have 2 daughters, 2 older daughters. One is Audrey. Audrey was really easy to follow passions. She knew she wanted to write or be an artist very early. She wanted to be a writer, and she was very passionate about chess. She was the state champion her first year. She was in 2nd grade. Now, it's funny because I have to say, okay, her dad's an author, her dad's an artist, and her dad was obsessed with chess, and I wasn't quite as good. I was the captain of my chess team, but I never won a state championship or anything like that. But I had a passion for it, and it's funny that my daughter just reflects that. Okay, now I've got and so basically we have Audrey on a career path for art and writing. And the cool thing is it fits in, and we're trying to talk about the next book, Power, fitting this into the family. We don't think of them as individuals with individual passions anymore. Ideally, we want to, and we have to be careful with this, but we want to kind of create a family passion. So all of my boys are passionate about jujitsu. All my, you know what I'm saying? And we all do jujitsu. So it kind of fits our family mold. All of my kids are passionate about chess. They're all state champions. Well, at least the 3 that have gone. State champions in chess. They're all passionate. I programmed that passion. It's something that's a family value for us. Okay, my oldest daughter is 13, but she started her passion for art several years ago, and we got a late start because I thought I was waiting to discover a passion too, like everybody else. But with chess, she started in 2nd grade. And then my other kids developed this passion for chess. Emma was the slowest to develop the passion for chess, but now she's obsessed. She's one of the best players. She studies the most chess. She loves chess. So I think we've programmed that passion. And they are passionate about chess. They love chess. What are the odds that they just all had that genetically and that their dad played? I doubt it. I think we can program passions. Okay, so then we say, okay, if we can pick a career path, we want to do it wisely. So what do we consider? Well, we don't consider the career path. First, we consider the 4 things that are most important to all people: faith, family, finances, and fitness. Okay, so finances is we have to have some money to live. So when we're doing a career, we're doing it, obviously we want to enjoy it, but we're doing it for money. And so we have to have that consideration. What is a good career path? When we talk about family, my daughters are going to stay home and raise their kids if it's at all possible. So I want a career path that they can do from home. That's really important to me. They might need to make some money because it's really hard now for single income earners. So it'd be great if my daughters can make money from home. There's more and more opportunities. Women are starting to become big earners from home, and that kind of is something that I want to consider. So what works for the family? Gender considerations. I'm just going to throw this out, and guys, I know sometimes you guys are looking for a science. Everybody wants a science. Step 1, 2, 3. We call this the art of raising children for greatness. There is no science. It is wisdom. It is not a formula. So I'm just bringing things that you should consider, and then you're going to have to work them out for your children and your family situation. I would highly recommend gender considerations. I know that we live in a world that pretends they don't exist, and if in fact, thwarts them. If you have a girl, they encourage her to go after the traditional boy things, and vice versa. If you have a boy, they love it when the boy goes after female careers because they're trying to break down these barriers. They believe it's a social construct, something that we just program. I don't believe that. I think that it's actually tied to our genetics, our DNA, and we've had this problem because I do traditionally very passions. Like I love chess, and guess what? The chess world is 90% male. For a reason. I do jujitsu. The jujitsu world is 90% male. The problem is my daughter, when she was in 2nd grade, Audrey, before going through puberty, she loved chess. And so I thought, dude, she beat all the boys. She won the state championship in 2nd grade. I thought, man, it's just, why waste this? It's so exciting. And we got her involved in chess, and she did really well, and she was super passionate. She used to obsess over chess. She'd play and study on her own. We never had to teach her anything, right? And then she hit puberty. And this actually, we saw this to another girl. There was another homeschool family. Her girl was a state champion. Her girl was really good at chess. It basically, all of a sudden, just like we went to the next tournament, and all of a sudden she went from kind of like a baggy, loose shirt and whatever to like makeup and all fancy. Oh, and guess what? She didn't want to play chess anymore. As hit puberty. And that happened. I think whatever you choose, God will give wisdom and use it for the good. Yes. Not stress over. Yeah, you shouldn't stress over too much. It should be exciting. And so the same thing happened to my daughter. And so it's just, I don't want to discourage girls from going traditionally boy routes. There's nothing wrong with that. I think there's nothing wrong with girls playing chess. But my daughter hit puberty, and now it's like, come on, Audrey, don't you want to play chess? And she still likes chess. She doesn't have that passion anymore. And I don't know. It's weird. It's sad, actually, because as a father, I was so excited, And I'm going to see what happens with Emma, because now Emma is the most obsessed with chess in our family. She plays all the time. We'll see what happens. She hit puberty. The same thing happens in jiu-jitsu. We have these little girls. They're champions. They're more passionate about jiu-jitsu than the boys. Jiu-jitsu is basically wrestling, submission grappling. And everybody gets excited because they see these girls and they're doing so well and they compete with the boys. They hit puberty, and then all of a sudden the boys kick their butt because of the physical difference. But then the other thing is the girls don't care anymore. Like we just had this happen in our gym. This girl's super good at jiu-jitsu. She still does it. But all of a sudden the spark is gone. And remember, that plays, the hormones and stuff like that plays a huge role in passion. So it's just something to consider when you're picking this. Okay, so Audrey I have all my kids on a career path. Most of them, I kind of picked it. Audrey kind of got the best. She was passionate about art and writing. I was like, cool, that works for our family. I can help you in that. Strategically, it's wise. And let's go with it. Emma, we couldn't find a thing. Emma was a little bit passionate about everything. She really likes chess. That's not a real career path. She wants to be a teacher because, we do the school and stuff, and she's very good at teaching. She wants to be a mommy. That's great. That's not a career path, but it is something she will absolutely be. I don't mean that offensively. I just mean it's not a marketable skill for the most part, momming. It's very valuable. She'll be a mom, hopefully, but a career path, so like a marketable skill. And so we tried different things. I tried to get her, what about art? What about writing? And she likes art, but not like her sister who will sit there and do art all day and obsess over it. So finally I got tired of it. I'm like, dude, Emma, you're 11 years old. So you know what we did for her birthday? I said, well, you know what we need for our business? Because for this business, we need a photographer. because we need to take pictures and social media, and we want to be able to film these awesome videos for you at Blue Manor Academy. We need a family photographer. So I had this really nice camera that I was going to learn because I used to try to do everything for the business. And I gave her this like my Canon Rebel T3i. It's a really nice camera. And I'm like, you are a photographer. And guess what? She's like, it's so awesome. She doesn't have to explore all these different things. Now she's focused and she's like, sweet. She just embraced it. I'm not saying you can always get away with that, but my daughter's now out there taking pictures all the time. And dude, I don't know anything about photography really. And she's like, she was watching YouTube videos. I could never figure out how to use my camera. I had too many buttons and stuff. And I just wasn't interested in it. But she's watching all these YouTube videos, like figuring out how to change the aperture and stuff on the camera. I'm like, sweet. So I picked it for her and she's passionate about it. So you can kind of pick it. I would be careful waiting. If you look at all the greats, like in this book, like Tiger Woods, his dad didn't wait to see if he had a passion about golf. He gave his kid that passion at 3 years old, and Tiger Woods became a prodigy. If you look at Mozart and Beethoven, their dad wasn't like, oh, cool, this 2-year-old wants to play music. They gave him that passion and became some of the greats, and I guarantee that they loved it. We talk about how you mostly are passionate about the things you're good at. Like, for instance, I was kind of passionate about basketball, and then I got on a team and I was like, oh, I'm 5'5", and I'm horrible, and I'm not good at basketball, and I lost my passion. But when I started wrestling and I was really good and placing in tournaments and becoming the team captain and I got third at state, I was really passionate about wrestling because I was good at it. So if you start your kid early, they'll probably be good at it and it will become part of their identity and they'll be passionate about it because they're good at it. So these are all things to consider, which I talk about in the book. Okay, really quick, I'm going to read this. Okay. Greek, Hebrew. My 10-year-old has dabbled in Chinese, Greek, Hebrew, and the last couple years I exposed them to several languages since they were babies and toddlers. Okay, cool. Yes. Now you want to be careful with that, and I don't want to discourage anything, and I don't want to ever be offensive, but you have to be careful. Like, that's another thing. We don't want them to be too well-rounded. Although I think, Greek and Hebrew, like there's certainly that's consistent with our faith, right? It'll tie into the Bible and studying the Bible. And Chinese, I actually was fluent in Chinese for a little while. I learned it in the military, 6 months intensive course when I went through the Special Forces training. I haven't used it since. So we want to be really careful that we're not dabbling in a little bit of everything, searching, that we get focused pretty early and we know what we're after, what we want. It'll give us a huge competitive advantage. Like, I wasted so much time learning Spanish, I've never been able to use it. I wasted tons of time learning Chinese, I've never been able to use it. And guess what? It's gone because I didn't use it. Does that make sense? So we got to be really careful with our time. I hope that helps a little bit. Now I wanted to specifically address the doctor question. So Stacey said her daughter really keeps saying she wants to be a doctor. And how would you follow this career path? And is it a good one? For example, all my kids, like for a while, they got so passionate about chess and they want to be world champions. I'm like, we need to put the brakes on here a little bit, guys, because there's not a career path really in chess for you. There's not a whole lot. It's not a huge marketable skill, so we have to be careful. Like, let's direct this towards marketable skills. Obviously, a doctor's a marketable skill. It's a daughter that wants to be a doctor. So then you have to say, okay, does she want a family? Because doctors, my dad's a doctor, okay? It's a very demanding job. It's very hard to raise children as a mother and feed them and take care of them nurture them the way that they need and be a doctor. But there's more and more doctors that are working from home, with the web and all sorts of stuff. So there is a path there. And at the very least, she can be the family doctor. I mean, medicine is always valuable, right? So I think that that's a great career path. And we don't have to, we can switch course later if we have to, right? But I think that's a good career path. How would you pursue that? So Stacey's like, well, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what curriculum to get. I don't even know what to do. Okay. And it's tricky. Your kid can't practice performing surgery. So what makes a successful doctor? How would I go about this if this is the path I want to go? Bedside manner is super important to doctors. It's maybe more important. You're dealing with sensitive issues, people's health. It can be embarrassing. It can be, it can be frustrating for them. They're upset. They're in pain. Learning a bedside manner is almost more important, or as important. I shouldn't say more important, but as important as the medicine. So you might start taking your daughter to nursing homes. It might be really hard, but when she's a little older, you take her to hospice, and you learn to get comfortable with sickness and even death, and that's something you're gonna have to deal with as a doctor, and loving people who are sick and take care of them. So and women tend to make great carekeepers, great nurses, great doctors. So that's one thing. You could breed animals. I think raising and breeding animals, I said in the book, I don't recommend pets, but if you want to be a doctor, that's a great way to learn about the the miracle of life and stuff like that, and taking care of an animal, and when they get sick, taking care of them, and stuff like that. So that actually might be something, and you're not risking, a real human being. But if they take care of some mice, I think that would actually be reasonable for somebody who wanted to be a doctor. You need to learn tons about business. A lot of doctors now have their own small practices. They have to know how to run a business. That's what my father does. He doesn't work for a hospital or some big company. He started his own little clinic. Vocabulary is really important. It's something you do at an early age. There's tons of vocabulary. It's overwhelming. I remember my dad, when he was going through medical school, he's just memorized like this book of medical terms and all sorts of stuff. And you need to know like Latin and Greek roots and just all of this different stuff. And that's something a young kid could start learning. And by the time she got to medical school, it would be so easy because she'd know all of it. That's a huge advantage. And then people are going to look at her like a miracle, like, wow, like, and she's like, oh, she's picking it up so fast. But that's something you could do in advance so she isn't totally just overwhelmed with medical school when the time comes. Okay, especially if she has a family. Like my dad, he went through when I was middle school or, elementary school or something. I guess it's elementary school. And it was just so overwhelming to go through medical school and have a family and all that stress and stuff like that. So you could do that. Family first aid. First aid is so important. There's so much even in the military that I didn't learn until an adult. Family first aid is important. Learning to just treat cuts and diagnose, there's so many just common illnesses that we don't know how to treat, things that they need to know about health. One was coffee, for instance. I remember when I first started drinking coffee, I got really sick, but I didn't correlate the two. And I was at this World Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. I was going into my senior year. I was with all these pretty girls from Honduras. It was crazy. There was like 2 guys from Honduras, and then they sent all these girls. They were all beautiful, and they drank coffee like this, and it was just like peer pressure. They would just drink this thing like water, and I had never drank coffee before, and so I'm like, oh God, I don't know what's wrong. Like, what bad luck? Why am I so sick? I didn't understand that coffee's a diuretic, and I was so sick. I was like sweating and like, what bad luck? But again, I went through a lot of my life. I had these headaches, and I get these headaches every day. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and the doctors couldn't figure it out, and they took all these MRIs and stuff like that. And then I realized, and this is important for science, learning how to solve your own problems, think for yourself, test different things. These are all things your daughter's going to want to learn. And I think it was my deodorant. That it really affected me because before I'd go to work every day, I'd put it on, and I get to work, I'm like, oh, I got a headache. And I think the scent or something was maybe giving me headaches. And I learned this because when I stopped going to work every day, there were just some days I didn't throw on deodorant. I'm like, oh, my headaches are going away. And then one day I was going to jujitsu, which isn't every day, and I put on deodorant. I'm like, oh, I'm getting a headache. And so anyway, learning about medicine, there's so much we can solve by ourselves, right? Herbal medicine, natural medicine, something your daughter could start growing herbs and learning about it. It'd be so cool. I would love to learn that. She could teach me someday. She could do a course from Blue Manor on it. I would love to learn some more about natural medicine. I used to think it was all hokey and weird. And then my mother-in-law, I had a sore throat, and I'm like taking all these cough drops, so it's don't do anything for me. And she's like, oh, you should take this herbal tea or something. I'm like, okay, whatever. I took the tea. It was a miracle. It immediately cleared up my throat. And I was like, wow, I'm a believer. I think it was like throat coat or something. I'm like, that was amazing. But then I started drinking too much of it. It made me sick too. So then I learned something, right? I just need to drink a little bit of it. You don't drink it for flavor. It's very potent. But learning natural medicine is important. Anatomy. This is so easy. There's apps on there. You can get really high quality ones. And your daughter can start mastering anatomy. That's another thing that overwhelms people. When I went through Special Forces training, I was going to be a medic. I got injured halfway through the course. I never got to the medic school part, but I went through a lot of it. But a lot of kids would drop out because it was such an intensive course, and you had to memorize like all this anatomy in just a few weeks. It was crazy how intense this training was, and tons of kids would fail. But you can start your daughter right now. She can start learning all the anatomy. There's tons of muscles and bones and stuff. You can't even imagine how many, all the ligaments and stuff like that. That's just, it's going to take for a long time to learn and master. But there's no reason she couldn't start doing that for fun with apps. Even on Blue Manor Academy, we have some of the anatomy that she could start memorizing. I think we have all the bones and stuff on there. You start memorizing all the bones. So important to learn anyway, but especially if you want to be a doctor. Healthy living and diet, exercise, focus on that. There's all these diets. Every time I watch something on, because I don't know, it's my computer knows that I'm trying to be a little more healthy. It's amazing. So I'm getting all of these ads. I don't know why. About diet, and one's like, you'd cut this out or this food, and this all this stuff, and it's overwhelming because it's all contradictory. Wouldn't it be really cool if I could test some of those, and your daughter could start testing it? Hey, let's try this diet out for a few weeks, see what it does, see how we feel. Experiment. That's science. Experiment. So often today we teach, science is authority, and you'll see these leftist, They're so rude, and they're like, oh, these people, these Christians, they don't believe in science, and they're so ignorant. They just, no, of course we believe in science, but we also understand the scientific method, and we don't believe in your science. We understand how funding works. We don't believe in scientific authority. In other words, just because you're a scientist and you say it's so, I'd like to see your research. Science is testifiable and falsifiable. I'd like to conduct the same experiment. And if you can prove it to me, like gravity or something, I'll believe in it. But when you're talking about crazy things that are unprovable and it's part of this agenda, this political agenda, yeah, I don't know if I trust your science. But learning the scientific method would be so important for kids. At a very, very early age. It's important too in their thinking, because they're going to be bullied with this when they get into school later on in life. They'll be bullied with science. Well, all the scientists agree. I talk about that in this book. All the scientists agree that this is so, and how it's nonsense. It's consensus by authoritarian consensus. Like if you don't agree, you get kicked out, or you can't get a job at these universities to do the research. And they always seem to confirm their political opinion. It's really weird. They almost never come back with any sort of study that contradicts their initial hypothesis or theory or bias. So all of that stuff's important. So it's actually not that hard. Don't think of it like, well, how do I get them into tech school? I'm going to get these textbooks that the doctors use, but there's not for kids. Just forget about the textbooks and start thinking about what is medicine. What does a doctor do? They take care of people. They treat people's sicknesses. You can start doing that anytime. You could go to a veterinarian. That's another way. You go to a veterinarian and start treating animals. You can start volunteering to do that. That's a lot more open than trying to get an internship in a hospital. You're dealing with privacy issues and stuff like that. And start just practicing in medicine in that way. So anyway, I hope that gives you like some idea of the train of thought. Like my daughter with photography, I don't know anything. I'm like, go out there with the camera and play with it. Learn what all these buttons do. They're here for a reason. Learn what they do. Read the manual. Watch some videos. Go change the settings and take pictures and see what they do. Like explore. I don't have to teach it to her. And I don't, by the way. So many homeschooling moms just wear themselves out because they think that they have to be the one teaching. I don't teach my kids anything. Even in art, I don't teach my daughter that much art. She's on her own path. She's got her own videos and stuff she likes to watch, and she's experimenting. She has different style, and she likes to do a lot of traditional art, like painting and watercolors and just stuff like that I don't actually know very well. But these kids can teach themselves. Once they learn to read, they can start teaching themselves and follow their own passion. My boy Colton, I assigned him. I don't know if this is gonna last. He doesn't superly like coding, but he's starting to, and it gets more fun when you start getting good at it. But he's on a coding path. That's my nemesis in the business. It's held me back. So I'm like, we need a coder, and he knows what I don't know. I don't have any idea about coding. I barely even know the names of some of the languages like Python and stuff, and I just learned those. I don't know anything about coding, but he's teaching himself. So you don't have to know it. You just have to set them on that path and facilitate it. We bought him some courses. We encourage him. We hold him accountable. We try to motivate him using the techniques that I talk about in the education book. And so you don't have to know this, guys. I think too many moms sit down and they think that they are the teacher in the classroom. They have to do this for 6 hours a day, and then they're burn themselves out. I teach my kids, a few times a week. I check in with them. Once a week, we do a mentorship with another girl. So I invite my daughter into it. We talk about writing and drawing and stuff like that. But you guys would be scandalized if you saw how little I did. But you'd be impressed with how much they know. We are facilitators. We are not babysitters. That's what I would say on that. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, just ask them. I think if you read the books, you'll get a lot more. I'm way better in the books. I think I'm a great author. I'm not a great public speaker on here, especially without hardly any notes. So read the books, and then the next book is really going to help you. It's going to be Power. And when we talk about a career path, so many times we think of it as from a middle class mindset. Like, okay, I got to pick a job that I kind of like my whole life, and we're going to get him on this path, and he's going to be a doctor, he's going to be a lawyer, and that's not really what we're after. We are raising children for greatness. They're going to be world leaders. They're going to be running businesses. They're going to be running powerful families, right? They're going to have to know about wealth. They're going to have to know stuff like that, right? Public speaking. And when they learn those powers, it doesn't matter what career path they pick. They'll be exceptional at it. So just think about that in mind. Like my goal, like my dad's a doctor. Do I envy his lifestyle? No, he works super hard. He makes pretty good money, but he works super, super hard. It's a grueling job, I think. And in an afternoon, Orga just took his medical license. I don't know if you saw that, if you're new to the group. He dared to speak at a Trump rally, speak out against masks at a Trump rally. And in this fascists in Oregon, they're rabid communists over there. They just took his medical license. So he's fighting for that. So there's not a lot of job security even there, right? So we want our kids to become wealthy, and then they have even more options. So they're not just, the first thing is they have to have a paycheck to feed their family. And it's not all about their passion. They may just have to get any job possible to feed their family, and humbly. But we're going to teach them how to build up wealth so that they have the freedom to do whatever they want. So that's coming too. All right, guys, if there's no other questions, I hope you got something out of it. This is mostly for Stacy, but hopefully you guys gain some out of it. I know all your kids don't want to be doctors, but I want you to kind of get out of that mindset. Like, you don't have to go the traditional route. You don't have to wait for medical school to start training your child in medicine. And in fact, I would like to, on Blue Manor Academy, do a lot more with the natural medicine and stuff, that we don't always have to take an expensive pill. There's a lot of things we can do. I think doctors play a huge role, but there's a lot of things we can do for ourselves, and our kids should know it anyway. And if your kid wants to be a lawyer, you think, well, I can't. He's got to go to law school. Do I hook him up with a lawyer? Like, how do I do this? No, you know what a lawyer does. He's got to know the laws. He's got to know legal theory. There's vocabulary that they're gonna have to know, right? To be a lawyer, public speaking is everything almost in law, right? You have to be able to articulate. You are like a gunslinger with your words. Like, you are there to do battle with your words. So public speaking is huge in lawyers. So long as they follow the Lord. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that's the most important thing. If you read my books, I say that. Everything that we do, when we talk about greatness, it's for the glory of God and to bring honor to our families. Like, that's what we're trying to do here. So yeah, there is no greatness without God. If they pick a career path that dishonors God, then they fail. There's no greatness in that. And they'll find out that, I think, when they die, or even when they're alive. I look at some of these people in Hollywood, and in one sense, it seems like they have this glorious life and glamorous, and they've got all of this wealth and stuff. I wouldn't want that lifestyle. I wouldn't want that lifestyle. There's no greatness if you're not honoring God. And there's no peace. I think I talk about that in character, how there's actually really no peace. They're tormented. You can't be a happy murderer. If you commit murder, you'll be tormented. Even if you get away with it, it will torment you. Evil doesn't ever get away with anything. It always come back to haunt you. Not with karma. It's like, can you have a good relationship with your wife if you're an adulterer? No. You may, in one sense, enjoy that relationship for the afternoon with that girl and stuff like that, but you're deteriorating on the inside. You've lost your honor. You no longer are in good standing with God. So, yes, I do. I read it in your book. Good. Yeah. And so anyway, absolutely. I want to say, when we talk about this, everything should be to the glory of God. And that's why I say, when you think about a career path, you think about the 4 F's of fulfillment: faith, and that's the most important, family, finances, and fitness, and all of those things we should consider with how we live our lives. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. And if you have questions, just ask them, and I'll answer them next week or something. And you guys' questions are the most important thing for me. Keep reading the books. Power should be out. I'm hoping by Christmas it's going to be good, and it'll really just finish off this series, because there's so many things that you guys are having questions about that are in the next book. And I don't want to spoil that book for you. After that, the last book in the series will be discussing, I don't know what it's going to be like, if we're going to be calling it evil or the enemy or what, but it's going to be revealing the enemy, our adversary, and how they've really taken down Christendom, what we're dealing with, who are these people. Yesterday, Oreo, the Oreo cookie was like, was promoting transgenderism. Like, what does that have to do with cookies? But you're starting to see that there is actually a cabal, and we do not have a free market system in this country. They are all working together. They promote each other's business. It's a secret cabal, and there's going to be a time coming when Christians can't buy or sell if we can't reverse this. There are people that have lost their ability to bank. They can't even have a bank account now because they have certain political views. So that'll be the last book. But the good news is you don't have to have that book. These first 4 books is everything you need to know to raise your children for greatness. And you have 3 of them. The 4th one will finish that up. So, all right, guys, until next week, thank you so much. Bye.